Second child won't sleep unless on me or my wife. Tests show she's healthy, but our lives are crumbling apart. We're about 3 months in now, and I'm at my wit's end. Our second kid just refuses to sleep. It's infuriatingly simple. The child just will not do it. Now, as if to mock me, she's recently discovered her hands and has developed a brand new anti-sleep tactic, poking herself in the eye the moment she's about to drift off. Not a single poke during the day, only at the gate of sleep, like it's her final line of defense. She'll only sleep if she's on top of either me or my wife, or latched to the breast. We've already gone to the doctor for the 3rd time, convinced there must be something wrong. But each time, the doctor looks at us and just says she's completely healthy. We've sunk nearly £20,000 into private medical bills alone, desperately chasing an answer, thinking no infant can possibly cry, wail, and rage against rest this much without some deep medical cause. But every test returns the same, perfect bill of health. Sleep consultants? We called 2. The first was nice enough and gave some advice, observed us, then finally shrugged, saying there wasn't anything more she could do. The second consultant actually referred us to an exorcist, telling us she'd never seen a baby hate sleep like this in 13 years of working with infants. We even went to counseling, but that was just a massive waste of energy. I already know why I feel utterly defeated. No amount of talking about it will solve the core issue. My baby still won't sleep. I could tell my story until I turned green and it wouldn't change a thing. At this point, I don't even have the energy to vent properly. Writing things down is less of a rant, more a desperate coping mechanism as the exhaustion piles up. I'm utterly defeated. There was a time when I was 11 and I ate scraps from a dumpster to survive, and somehow, I felt better and more alive than I do now. As if happiness isn't in the cards for me. But if you're still here, I appreciate you just for listening, in whatever way that matters. And right now, as I write these words, it's 2 a.m. My 4-month-old is asleep on my chest while my wife finally gets a few precious hours. I'm rocking back and forth in this chair. Risking sleep myself would be too dangerous. I can't let the baby fall. How did I get here? The long winding story has been brewing in my mind since the moment we found out we were pregnant, especially since my wife decided to keep it despite all my hesitations. So come, let me take you through what brought us here. My origin story isn't pretty. My parents believed love is all you need to raise kids, and in post-war Ukraine that meant a crowded house, and constant hardship. There were so many of us. My first scavenging for food, dumpster diving, was at age 8. By 11, I was hustling odd jobs just to feed myself, mowing lawns, helping the elderly, anything that would keep hunger away. The stress by 13 drove me to self-harm. At 14, after cutting myself badly, I swore a blood oath. If I ever had kids, they would have a good life, or I wouldn't have them at all. Resolved to never fall into the life my parents left me, I doubled down. At 15, I set my purpose straight. Even if it killed me, I'd make something of myself. I started self-educating, pushing relentlessly to escape Ukraine. By 18 I'd earned good grades and experiences, and though still self-harming, I accrued enough to land a spot in Germany for university. I worked and studied like a machine, barely sleeping. Somewhere in all that haze I met the woman who is now my wife, a fellow Ukrainian who'd also grown up with nothing. Graduated, worked even harder, built a career. Pulled off 100-hour weeks just to build enough experience to claw my way into an Ivy League business school in the US, and through all that, I kept a long-distance relationship with my girl. When I got my MBA, we both ended up in the UK with proper jobs. Things began to look up, solid work, good salary, and for the first time, therapy. It took years, but eventually I stopped hurting myself. The old coping mechanisms faded. Paid off my student debt, even if I had to grind every day for it. Eventually, I married the woman who'd been with me all the way since university. I finally felt stable, and despite my fears, she craved family deeply after 13 years together. So we tried for a child, had a beautiful baby girl nearly right away. I adore her, she's older now, precocious and kind. I work endlessly so I can provide her the life I swore I'd deliver. Best private school in the area, after-school activities, and meals cooked at home with ingredients from the local butcher and grocer, supermarket food only for snacking or treats. She's healthy, empathetic. I teach her every day not to take any of this privilege for granted, to respect what we have because it's a luxury I never knew. For a few precious years, life found a groove. She turned 4, and we'd settled into a rhythm of joy, at least, I thought we had. Except, my wife never quite felt complete. She'd bought into that idea that a real family means 2 children. I was always the skeptic, dragging my feet about another. We were never actively trying for number 2, I even planned to get a vasectomy, but work was a never-ending torrent. 13 months ago, fate intervened, the condom snapped. Suddenly, we were pregnant. We spent a long time talking it through. In the end, maybe it was the pressure, maybe just love, I bent to her wishes. My wife is my everything, I just couldn't say no. But now? It was the biggest mistake of my life. This kid simply will not sleep. Only sleeps on my chest or on the breast. We've exhausted every option. I'm running on maybe 4 hours of sleep every 36. My performance at work has plummeted. Missed out on a major bonus last quarter, a £15,000 gut punch. The fear is real. If I keep slipping, My big girl could lose her place at her school if I can't keep up with tuition. It's a nightmare. Every day looks like this. I hold the baby through the night so my wife can grab a shred of rest. My shift ends at 6. Sleep till 8 or 9 if I'm lucky. Work until 7 in the evening. Do the shopping during conference calls, sneak in loading the dishwasher between meetings, grab mouthfuls of food whenever there's a sliver of time. I've lost 11 kilograms since the baby was born. Settle the baby on her human mattress. Me, around 8 p.m., then do it all again the next night. And I can't make sense of it. Why did we do this? Our big girl was enough, she lit up our lives with happiness and pride. I have no idea what this second child is supposed to fulfill that our first couldn't. And now, money weighs on me constantly. How am I supposed to pay for 2 private schools, clubs, the standard of living I bled for? The world I built is crumbling before my eyes. I hadn't self-harmed in 16 years. Until last week, when I bit myself until I drew blood. I just needed something, anything, after the baby screamed for 6 solid hours, sleeping only long enough between shrieks to regain her strength. And yes, we checked, hospital visits, every test available. Physiologically, she's perfectly healthy. Why she detests sleep, I'll never know. Honestly, I feel like the captain walking down the deck of his ship in Pirates of the Caribbean as it splinters and sinks beneath him. I'm turning into my parents, but instead of dumpster diving, we're only marginally better off. This was not the life I spent years nearly killing myself to secure. My children, my world, were meant to have amazing childhoods, good schools, adventures. We used to go snowboarding, me and my big girl. Now? I'm just clinging on. And I don't know how much longer I can hold. For as long as I can remember, my identity, the very core of my being, has been founded on one unwavering principle: either provide an amazing childhood and limitless opportunities for my kids or simply not have them at all. That belief has been my driving force these past 29 years, pushing me forward no matter what was stacked against me. Now, all I can see is the crushing realization that I've failed at the only thing that truly mattered to me. I look at my kids and wonder if I've given them anything better than the miserable memories from my own childhood, or just set them up for a marginal improvement. It's like the universe's cruelest joke. Is that my great achievement? That their memories will be slightly less painful than the ones burned into me? It's not enough. It's nowhere close to enough. Every morning, the weight of that disappointment presses down on me so hard, I almost can't breathe. But I get up anyway, I have to. I do what needs to be done. Work gets worked, bills are paid, the baby falls asleep curled up on my chest. We're surviving. We have food on the table and clothes on our backs. But that's it. There's no spark anymore. I'm just getting through the day, running on empty, completely retreating from the dreams I once carried. I've accepted that happiness isn't meant for me. Every part of me has retreated into mediocrity, resigned to the dull rhythm of survival, not joy. Most days, it hurts just to get out of bed. I tell myself it doesn't matter, because I will keep doing it. I will do what has to be done, no matter how empty I feel. And when all is over, and I finally find myself on my deathbed, the only thing I'll have left to say is, thank fucking God. I've been sick and tired of this shit for as long as I can remember. Update 1. I have been staring down the same lane for so long that somewhere along the way, I lost track of the plot. It's amazing how hearing truly objective views from outside my bubble has pushed me to rethink some of my long-standing goals and beliefs. So here's my game plan going forward. First, I need to focus on myself. My wife and I have agreed to work out a new schedule, especially for sleep. It's become glaringly obvious to me that the brutal lack of sleep I've been facing is seriously warping my outlook on everything. I can't hope to be productive, helpful, or honestly even myself until I refresh my mind, so that's the absolute top priority. Next up is the baby. We're going to have our little one checked for reflux and allergies, just to rule out any underlying health issues. It's so stressful wondering if maybe something simple is making things harder than they need to be. On a bigger scale, I've taken a long look inside myself. It's not going to be a quick fix. These expectations and goals I carry around are deeply embedded, but I can see now how some of my priorities have gone a bit off track. It's time to recalibrate, and I'm actually looking forward to the challenge. Another step is finding a good therapist to help me work through the lingering demons from my childhood. I owe myself that much, and I owe it to my family to be the best version I can be. When it comes to the kids' education, I'm finally letting myself off the hook for now. Worrying about school at this point is pointless. 4 years can change nearly everything. When the time comes, we'll weigh public and private schools, but it's not an issue for today. I'm open-minded, but for now, I just need to let it be. Overarching all of this is my resolve to stop pressuring myself to live up to some arbitrary ideal dreamed up by a scared, vulnerable 14-year-old me. Life is so different now. I have to adjust my expectations to fit my current reality and recognize that, in many ways, I'm doing pretty damn well. My family is healthy, loved, well-fed, and is everything we truly need. Financial issues matter, but they aren't everything, certainly not as important as I used to think. It's time to give myself credit, to grow up, and finally let that frightened boy in me rest. It humbles me to reflect on how deeply it has helped to connect and engage my mind, keeping me distracted from my darkest thoughts. This shift in focus has been life-changing. Looking at the weirdness of biology, sometimes I'm just struck by how bizarrely we're built. We don't eat, we die, so instinctively, babies know to latch and root. If we're in danger, like falling, there's the Moro reflex. If we can't breathe, there's the righting reflex. And from birth, babies can cry to grab attention, another survival trait. But sleep? Nature really dropped the ball there. If a baby can't sleep, they not only don't sleep, they seem to fight it with all their might, even when utterly exhausted. I sometimes joke that if there's anything after death, I am dedicating myself to hunting down the cosmic designer who came up with this, just to make their existence as messy as possible. And then, out of nowhere, just when you think things are stabilizing, biology throws in the wild card of the 4-month sleep regression. Thanks, evolution. Recently, I finally managed to snag a long shower, the first in months. That quiet moment made me laugh, then unexpectedly cry. By the time I'm no longer legally responsible for anyone but myself, I'll be nearly 60. That's basically the end of my life. What'll I even do at that point, except count down the days? But despite everything, the first 35 years weren't bad. I survived more than I should have, overcame more than I could have imagined as a kid. Now it's just about surviving the next hour, then another, until my baby is less of a screaming, unpredictable clock and more of a small person. Then there'll be preteens, then school-aged kids, then the cycle repeats, until at last they're grown and I can, maybe, finally, do whatever I want. Sometimes I wish that if there is such a thing as rebirth, I'll get a second go in this time, choose to live wild, free, and childless, experiencing life to the fullest. And if not, well, perhaps there's just nothingness, and finally, I'll get my rest and quiet. Daydreaming over. Time for the baby's bath, a feed from my wife, a story from me, and then the all-out battle of bedtime begins. See you around, take care of yourselves. Today is Father's Day, the presents have already rolled in. A hefty helping of attitude and sass from my 8-year-old, a round of wails and screeches from my 19-month-old, and for dessert, a stone-cold attitude from my wife. Just another normal day, I suppose. Sometimes, I toy with the idea, what if I didn't have this compulsive psychological drive to uphold my responsibilities? What if, instead of carrying the weight of everything and everyone, I just took one of my bonuses, bought a one-way ticket to Cambodia, and started anew as a fisherman, a farmer, a dishwasher, anything? But the truth is, abandoning my family would tear me apart more than anything I've ever survived. I was abandoned myself, left to fend alone as a kid. I spent 20 years clawing my way out of abject poverty, truly hungry, scrounging from dumpsters to survive. Every single day, from when I was 12 to 30, I repeated one mantra: I will never, ever do this to my family if I ever have one. And that's the promise that holds everything together, even on days like this. Every single day, I remind myself that I am stable, financially, career-wise, as a provider and parent. I keep repeating this, over and over, because the idea of just leaving my wife, breaking up my family, and divorcing her feels almost unimaginable. The thought of uprooting my kids' lives, throwing everything into chaos, haunts me. Even my therapist says it would likely do more harm than good for everyone, including me. Honestly, I don't even want to jump into another relationship or start chasing some new life. All I want is just a little peace and quiet, a place where I can enjoy my hobbies, amateur coding, video games, electronics, DIY crafting. Is that too much to ask? The mental strain of leaving would be, at best, the same as what I cope with now, but I know deep down it could be so much worse. This would go against everything that's kept me going for nearly 20 years. My family has always been my anchor, my source of strength, and breaking that apart just feels impossible. I hope all that makes sense. It's so hard to explain, sometimes even to myself. At least I have my therapist, who I talk to regularly. We've been working through everything together. I was on medication for a while, but it had some weird interactions with my hypervigilance and things got really bad, really, fast. So I stopped. These days, meditation helps. I've just started taking solo walks, leaving me alone with my thoughts for a while, and that time is actually really helpful. But the pressure, it never stops. Between the baby, the kids, the demands of work, sometimes it's just too much. My therapist tells me things will start to get easier once my second child starts school. Maybe then, when both kids are more independent, my anxiety and this relentless, exhausting vigilance will finally start to subside. Maybe I won't expect them to stumble into some freak accident every minute of every day. Maybe I'll be able to breathe again. Update 2. It's been 6 months since my last update, and honestly, I'm not sure where to begin. The sleep situation has improved, marginally. Our little terror now sleeps for stretches of 3 to 4 hours instead of the previous 45-minute intervals, which feels like winning the lottery. But that small victory has been completely overshadowed by something I never saw coming. Last month, while going through our joint credit card statements, something I started doing religiously after missing that bonus, I found charges I didn't recognize. £180 at a hotel restaurant. £85 at a wine bar in town. All on days when my wife said she was at her mother's with the baby, helping with her father's recovery from his hip surgery. My first instinct was fraud. I called the bank, ready to dispute the charges. But then I looked closer at the dates and times. They aligned perfectly with her visits to Mum's. The hotel was 20 minutes from our house, nowhere near her parents' place. I sat in my car outside that hotel for 3 hours the following Tuesday, feeling like a complete lunatic. Sure enough, at 2:30 p.m., I watched my wife walk into the lobby. She wasn't alone. I recognized him immediately, James, from her old job, the one she'd mentioned casually over dinner a few months back. "Just grabbed coffee with James today, you remember him from the Christmas party?" she'd said, bouncing our daughter on her knee. I hadn't thought anything of it then. Why would I? I was barely functional from sleep deprivation. I didn't confront her that day. Instead, I drove home and sat in our kitchen, staring at the wall where we'd hung our wedding photos. Our daughter found me there when she got home from school, still in my work clothes at 6 p.m. "Daddy, why are you crying?" she asked. "Just tired, sweetheart. Just very, very tired." The confrontation came 3 days later. I'd planned it out, calm, rational, no accusations. Just questions. But when I asked about her Tuesday afternoon, watching her face change from confusion to panic to something that looked almost like relief, I lost it completely. "How long?" I asked. She didn't even try to deny it. 4 months. 4 months. While I was holding our baby through the night, losing weight, missing work, descending into the darkest mental space I'd been in since I was a teenager, she was having afternoon rendezvous with James from her old job. It started when I was so exhausted, so overwhelmed, she said, tears streaming down her face. "You were barely there emotionally. I felt like I was drowning, and James. He listened. He made me feel human again." The irony was suffocating. While I was sacrificing every ounce of myself so she could get those precious hours of sleep, she was using some of that time to betray everything we'd built together. But here's the part that's eating me alive: I understand it. Not the betrayal, but the desperation that led to it. I know what it feels like to be so depleted that you'd grab onto anything that offered a moment of relief. The difference is, I grabbed onto self-harm. She grabbed onto someone else. We're in couples therapy now, in addition to my individual sessions. The therapist keeps talking about rebuilding trust and working through the underlying issues, but I sit there wondering if I even have the energy to try. Between work, the kids, and now this emotional minefield, I feel like I'm operating at about 5% capacity. The worst part? Our older daughter knows something's wrong. She started acting out at school, clingy at home. Last week, she asked me if Mommy and Daddy were getting divorced. I told her no, but honestly, I don't know what we're doing. James, apparently, has a wife and 2 kids of his own. My wife ended things with him immediately after I found out, or so she says. Trust isn't exactly my strong suit right now. Some nights, after I've finally gotten the baby settled and I'm sitting in that chair I've come to hate, I think about my original plan. The vasectomy I never got around to, the life we had when it was just the 3 of us. How different things might be if that condom hadn't failed. Then I look down at this tiny person sleeping on my chest, the same person who's caused so much chaos but who also has these moments of perfect stillness, and I realize I can't imagine our life without her now, despite everything. My wife keeps saying she wants to fix this, that she'll do whatever it takes. She's been sleeping on the sofa, giving me space. She took overnight duty for the first time in months, though the baby still prefers me, which feels like another cruel joke. Yesterday, she suggested we book a weekend away, just the 2 of us. Her parents could watch the kids. The idea of being alone with her right now, pretending things are normal, makes my stomach turn. But our therapist says we need to try to reconnect. I don't know if I want to reconnect. I don't know if I want to throw away 13 years and break up our family. I don't know anything anymore except that I'm still here, still getting up every day, still doing what needs to be done. The only thing that's kept me sane is a realization I had during one of my solo walks. This chaos, this exhaustion, this feeling like I'm barely surviving, it's temporary. Not the marriage stuff, that I haven't figured out yet. But the sleepless nights, the constant crying, the feeling like I'm drowning in responsibility. My older daughter went through this phase too, and now, she's this amazing little person who makes me laugh every day. This baby will eventually sleep through the night. She'll eventually become a person I can have conversations with, someone who might even understand why Daddy looks so tired in all the photos from her first 2 years. Whether my marriage survives this is another question entirely. But for now, I'm just focusing on the next hour, then the next day, because despite everything, the betrayal, the exhaustion, the financial stress, walking away would still mean becoming the kind of person I swore I'd never be. And that promise I made at 14 is still the only thing I know for certain about myself. Update 3. It's been another 4 months, and I wish I could say things have gotten simpler. They haven't. The baby is finally sleeping through the night, most nights, anyway. She's 2 years old now, walking, babbling, and has developed this infectious laugh that catches me off guard sometimes. The sleep deprivation fog has lifted enough that I can think clearly again, which turns out to be both a blessing and a curse. With my head clear, the full weight of everything hit me like a freight train. My wife's affair wasn't just 4 months of betrayal, it was 4 months during the most vulnerable period of our lives together. While I was literally holding our family together with my bare hands, she was unraveling it with hers. Couples therapy became a battlefield. Our therapist, Dr. Martinez, kept pushing this narrative about mutual responsibility and addressing the underlying issues that led to the affair. 3 sessions in, I snapped. "I'm sorry, what exactly was my contribution to this?" I asked. "Working myself to the bone? Taking care of our children? Missing sleep so my wife could rest?" My wife, Sarah, I realize I've never used her name in these posts, broke down crying again. "You weren't emotionally available," she sobbed. "I felt like I was drowning." "We were both drowning," I shot back. "The difference is, I threw you a life preserver. You threw me an anchor." Dr. Martinez suggested we take a break from joint sessions and focus on individual therapy. Probably for the best, because I was getting close to saying things I couldn't take back. That's when the second bombshell dropped. I was going through old phone bills. Yes, I'd become that guy who checks everything now, when I noticed a pattern. Text messages to a number I didn't recognize, going back almost a year. Way before James. Way before our second daughter was even born. My hands were shaking as I reverse searched the number. Michael Chen. A name that meant nothing to me, which somehow made it worse than James. When I confronted Sarah about it, she crumbled completely. Michael was someone she'd met at a mom and baby group when our first daughter was 3. It was just texting, she insisted. Just someone to talk to who understood. But the timing of those messages told a different story. Late nights when I thought she was up feeding the baby. Afternoons when she said she was taking our daughter to the park. The emotional affair had been going on for years, and James was just the physical escalation. "How many others?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She couldn't look at me. "There's been no one else physical. Just Michael for emotional support, then James. That's it. I swear." I wanted to believe her, but trust is like virginity, once it's gone forever. The strangest part? I felt relief. Not because the betrayal was somehow less, but because finally, everything made sense. The distance I'd felt from her over the past few years, the way she'd seemed to drift away even before our second pregnancy. The feeling that I was fighting for our marriage alone. I wasn't losing my mind. I was just married to someone who'd been living a double life. Our older daughter, Emma, started having nightmares. Nothing specific, just general anxiety about bad things happening. Kids pick up on everything, even when you think you're hiding it well. One morning, she crawled into bed with me while Sarah was getting the baby ready and whispered, "Daddy, are you and Mummy going to get divorced like Tommy's parents?" I held her close and lied through my teeth. "No, sweetheart. Mummy and Daddy are just working through some grown-up problems." But that afternoon, I called a divorce attorney. Not because I'd made up my mind, but because I needed to understand what the nuclear option looked like, what it would mean for the girls, for our finances, for the life I'd spent 20 years building. The consultation was brutal. In the UK, the courts favor joint custody. I'd likely see my daughters every other weekend and one evening a week. The house would probably have to be sold. Emma would have to change schools. The private school I'd bled for would be financially impossible as a single parent paying child support. Everything I'd worked for, everything I'd promised that 14-year-old boy who swore his children would have better, would be gone. I sat in my car outside the attorney's office for an hour, crying like I hadn't since I was a kid scrounging for food in those dumpsters. That evening, Sarah tried to talk. She'd made dinner, actually cooked, something she hadn't done since before the baby was born. Emma was in bed, the baby was settled, and she'd even opened a bottle of wine. "I know I've destroyed everything," she started, "but I want to fight for us. For our family." I looked at her across our kitchen table, this woman I'd loved since we were barely adults ourselves, and felt nothing but exhaustion. "Fight for us?" I said. "Where was that fight when you were texting Michael? Where was it when you were meeting James at hotels? You didn't fight for us, Sarah. You fought against us." She reached across the table for my hand, but I pulled away. "I made mistakes." "No," I interrupted. "Forgetting to buy milk is a mistake. Cheating on your husband while he's holding your baby through the night isn't a mistake. It's a choice. A series of choices." The wine sat untouched between us. In the end, she went to bed alone, and I spent another night in that chair, holding our daughter while she slept. But something had shifted. Maybe it was the lawyer's consultation, maybe it was finally having all the pieces of the puzzle, but I felt calm. Not happy, not content, but calm. For the first time in months, I wasn't drowning. I was treading water, and for now, that was enough. This morning, Sarah asked if I wanted to try couples therapy again with a different therapist. I told her I'd think about it. And I will think about it. But right now, I'm just focused on being the father my girls need. Everything else, the marriage, the betrayal, the future, can wait until I'm strong enough to handle it properly. One day at a time, 1 hour at a time. Just like always. The baby is napping on my chest as I write this. In a few minutes, Emma will get home from school and tell me about her day. Tonight, I'll read them both stories and tuck them in. Tomorrow, I'll get up and do it all again. Because that's what fathers do. Even when everything else falls apart, we show up.